Welcome to the Coven Chat.
Thank you for joining me here at the Maiden Circle Coven Chat podcast, where we talk all things witchy, spiritual, and human.
Hello, merry meet, and welcome. In today's episode, we are talking about elemental magic. Today, we have an interview with both an author and practicing witch, Ayshen Irfan, and they're going to tell us all about their practice and their business and what elemental magic is. I learned something during this interview, and hopefully you will too. And I realized while speaking with Ayshen that elemental magic is very core to my own practice, even though I never really addressed it that way. It is a linchpin in the Wiccan practice. Most standard Wiccan rituals start with opening a circle or crafting a sacred circle. And the main way we do that is by doing something called calling the quarters. And in calling the quarters, we are going through the cardinal directions. And each cardinal direction corresponds with one of the four main elements. Of course, for all you science nerds out there, we are not talking about the table of elements. We are talking about four core elements that everything is made of. At least that's the idea. So let's go ahead and start our show with our pagan fun fact, and then we'll jump right into the interview. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get on with it.
Pagan fun fact. Here's your fun facts now.
In our interview today, we discuss the four cardinal elements and how they play into a magical practice. Those elements are earth, air, fire, and water. Many people attribute the understanding of those elements to the Greek philosopher Aristotle, but the concept actually originated long before Aristotle, with a Greek philosopher named Empedocles. Empedocles was born in Italy, however, it was a Greek state at that time, and he passed at around 60 years old in Peloponnese, Greece. Of course, Aristotle, who most of us have heard of, did take the idea a bit further, and he decided, or theorized, that those four cardinal elements, which supposedly everything is made of, are actually products of four different bodies. In Aristotle's version, air, fire, earth, and water come from hot, wet, dry, and cold, that the true elements of nature weren't necessarily these things, but these experiences, these concepts. So if you bring together hot and dry, you have fire. Hot and wet, you have air. Cold and dry, you have earth. Cold and wet, you have water. And from these original bodies, we get our cardinal elements, and then from those elements, we get everything else the earth is made of. Aristotle was the first to call these root things, these elements. He was the first to say that air is not the absence of matter, but it is its own thing, and, it's separate from water. And if you bring these things together, if you bring, say, air and water together, you have breath, you have aspiration. If you put earth and water together, you have growth, life, plants. There is one more root thing that could be called an element, but because it is all-encompassing, it's not one of the cardinal elements, and that's ether or ether. Ether is essentially the energy, the soul that creates all things. You could even consider it another word for God or divinity. And with all four of those elements plus ether, we have all of existence. I encourage you to look into both the philosophies of Empedocles as well as Aristotle to learn a bit more about these cardinal elements, about ether, about the basic building blocks of the spiritual world, the physical world. And if you're feeling it, go ahead and take a look at those chemical elements too, that table of elements that we all had pasted in our lockers in high school. Or maybe that was just me being a big nerd. The things that create our world are so fascinating. So this was a little less of a direct fun fact and a little bit of musing added to it. But I do encourage you to look into these elements, look into elemental magic, and look into what creates our universe. It is truly fascinating. Hello, I am here with Ayshen Irfan, author of the Scarlet Cherry Vampire series and practicing witch. And today we are talking about elemental magic. How are you today, Ayshen?
I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
Oh, I'm lovely, thank you. We've already had a pretty nice chat as it is. So I am very excited to get to know you more and learn more about elemental magic. So, first, can you just introduce yourself to our listeners a bit? Let us know a bit about who you are, how do you, I guess, spend your day first? We'll start with that. Who you are, what's your job like, and whatever you want us to know.
Okay. So I'm Ayshen. I'm a university student. I study linguistics and literature. So I spend a lot of my time studying and a lot of my time at uni, and then the rest of my time writing. And I don't really do much else, to be honest.
I mean, that's a
Yeah.
very good way to spend time.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. So tell us more about your practice. You are a practicing witch. So what are your beliefs, your background? How did what's your practice? Let's start there.
Okay. So when I was quite young, I think I was around 10, I really got into sort of fantasy fiction, specifically magical realism and sort of paranormal urban fantasy. And I began to explore sort of the realms of witchcraft in a fantastical sense from there. But then I accidentally bought a book on real witchcraft and I read the whole thing. And it stuck with me and resonated with me in the most beautiful way. So from the age of 10, I've been sort of, I mean, maybe not consistently because the teenage years are a weird time and I can't say I was completely dedicated during those, but that's when I got into it and it's about 12 years ago.
Okay, that's a very good long time. I actually also started my practice when I was around 12 years old.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and it was almost a similar path because it was like I started with not fantasy but fantastical magic, television magic essentially.
Yes,
And
yeah.
ended up just looking deeper into that. And here we are, 10 and
Yeah.
20 years later.
Yeah.
So what is the practice that you've established now?
So I mainly focus on things to do with the elements, and I also do lunar magic, so moon cycles, and exploring those. But I like to do elemental magic because it's so extensive and so vast, but also quite specific, which I know is a bit of an oxymoron, but it encompasses so many different elements of, well, elements as in like general elements of everything. But you can always bring it back to sort of honing it down to these very 5 specific points and connecting with those. So it means that you can connect with so many things, but in a way that feels quite personal, if that makes sense to you. I don't know if I worded that well.
I think it does. I think you worded it fine. For our listeners, can you explain what elemental magic actually is?
Yeah, so I'm sure it would be different for other people, but for me, it's so there are 5, well, to me, there are 5 elements. It's spirit, fire, earth, air, and water. And so a lot of that's tied in with the pentagram. If you choose to look at it that way, there are hundreds of interpretations for the pentagram, and I'm not saying mine is right. That's just my sort of way of seeing it. So I connect with all of the different elements and how they relate both to the world around us and also sort of the intrinsic sense of self and the different parts of our being and the different parts of our mind and the different energies that these things can cool and what they represent, and then using that to craft sort of rituals and practice based on these different aspects to each of the elements.
So what is it that draws you to this practice? Like, why are you so attached or so interested in working with these 5 elements?
It's a really good question. I think because it's the most stripped back thing we have, really. I mean, from the beginning of time, essentially, these are the things we've always had. It's a lot of it's nature magic, because obviously all of these things are in nature, and I think as a species now we're so disconnected from nature and the natural and sort of where we are meant to be in this grand circle of life. And by honoring the elements, we find a way to reconnect with that and to have an element of reverence for all of these different parts of the universe. So take fire, for example. It's a passionate element. It's about love and lust and, again, passion. And then we have like Beltane and the celebrations for it. And it's what we cook our food with. We couldn't have evolved without it. But at the same time, it's destructive and it destroys and it harms us if we go near it. And this balance between all of these ginormous things that we then connect with and find in ourselves as well.
That is really lovely. I guess you've already sort of touched on it. It is a connection to nature. It is a connection to where we're supposed to be. I know a lot of us humans tend to separate ourselves outside of nature based on our ego, essentially. We think that we are not, that we are in a opposition with nature, with
Yeah.
animals, with trees. We build on top of it and we try to wipe it away and get it out of our lives as much as possible. So you did already touch on that, but would you have any more thoughts on why it's important to practice elemental magic? Because as you were speaking, I did realize that it is actually, without necessarily using the name elemental magic, it is very core to Wiccan practice. It's very core to many spiritual pagan practices without even having to put a name on it. So why do you think that is? Why do you think it is such a core practice? And I know you already said some of it, but if you have more.
I think probably I can only speak for myself on this because, I mean, Wicca and witchcraft and paganism and all the various different things that people honor are obviously so individual to the person. But I think, in my opinion, it's kind of the oldest religion, because if you think about polytheism back in the day before we became sort of more of a mono religious society, or world, then it was personifying the elements and giving them stories as a way to understand and empathize with them, and for a way to us to connect with them. We had all these sort of ginormous concepts of all the different parts of nature and all of their different destructions and all the things that they could do and things they could give and take away. And I think we were very overwhelmed as a species, and so we then tried to give them all names and give them all thoughts and feelings, and it was a way to connect with them. And then slowly, as time's gone on, we've disconnected from them. And yeah, you're right. A lot of Wicca and practice is elemental magic anyway. I just tend to hone in on it more and have that more as my specific thing. But it is generally sort of things that everyone encompasses. But I think it keeps us more solid in ourselves and connected with those things around us. And that's all we can really have in this life, I think.
I mean, that is all we really have, is connection with what's around us and connection with the living beings, the humans that we interact with.
I completely agree, but I think we're so disconnected. So this is a really beautiful way to find that with everything and honor it as well.
Beautiful. So some of the larger things that you've mentioned probably are also important to you on a personal level. But what do you get out of this practice? Like when you're doing elemental rituals, when you're making these connections, what has it done in your life, I suppose? How has it affected your life over the last, say, 10 years since you began your practice?
Oh, wow, that's such a good question. That's a really good question, and it stumped me. I mean, there are several ways I could answer that. I mean, on one hand, I think it's given me more solidity in myself. I feel more a part of this universe and like I have a place here, like I belong, I suppose. And I don't mean belong as in I have a job and I have friends and I have like this sort of functionalist place in society, more just I belong in the universe with every living thing around me because I'm here now. And there's a real sense of surety and self-love and also love for other things that comes with that. Also, on a slightly more artistic, I suppose, note, I incorporate so much of this stuff into my writing, so it has given me a massive amount of material to work with because I do try and incorporate sort of real magic, some of it, into my books. And also it's made me interested in so many things about history and about different religions and about different ways people used to live that I probably wouldn't have had otherwise. So it's just opened many doors for me.
That is truly beautiful. I know we didn't discuss in advance, but if you would like to share with our readers about your series, briefly, you're welcome to do so because I would love to hear more about it. I'm a big vampire fan, and I'm sure some of our listeners are too.
Yeah, of course. I'll just briefly. So there is a witch. One of the main characters is a witch in my series, and so many of her opinions are my opinions. If you are ever reading anything which is with her talking, just know that it's me talking through her. But also another one of the characters is a necromancer, and so I looked at real necromantic practices from hundreds of years ago and incorporated sort of how people genuinely used to use those as rituals. But on a more personal level, I talk about elements and all of their correspondence frequently in it and use those to tie into the plot line. And it's all thoroughly researched and all completely true if you choose to look at it from sort of my way of looking at it, then true in that sense of what these things represent and what they mean and what power they hold. But also I'm completely open to other people disagreeing with that. I'm not saying my way is the true way, just my understanding of it.
I love that. I mean, there is truth in your writing, regardless of whether someone else agrees to it. It's a truth.
Yeah.
I look forward to reading your novels. Is any of your writing available?
Oh yes, the first three books in the series are out. You can find them on Amazon. I also do giveaways for bookmarks. They're completely free. So if you want a bookmark, just send me a message and I will send them internationally.
Wonderful. And that is on Twitter?
Yeah, Twitter. Yes. It's at author_Ayshen.
Perfect. I will put that in the show notes. So, what would you say with this experience has been your most interesting, strange, funny, favorite moments in this practice, or just any incident that stands out to you, if there are any?
Okay. So I do have a story, and it is, I mean, I was about 14 at this point, so I'd been doing it, and it's not actually to do with my practice. It's just, I think, the power of the pentagram. So I've always honored the pentagram. I've worn the same necklace since I was 11 years old of it. I cleanse it frequently. I use it in all my practice because I do subscribe to the idea of the pentagram representing the elements. Anyway, it's not really the point. I sort of digressed. I went to the park with my partner at the time. It was about 10 p.m. and there was this little private part of the park that has not a walkway in the middle. And I walked through it and I sat down on the floor to probably, if I'm being honest, have a cigarette. And I just had this overwhelming sense of absolute terror. I can't explain. I've never felt anything like it in my life. I just looked at him and I said, we need to leave right now. I was like, we need to just get out of here. I can't explain why, but we need to go. So I stood up then and watched to leave the park, looked behind me, and I had sat slap bang in the center of a pentagram someone had drawn in chalk. And I don't know what they were trying to do or what they were trying to summon, perhaps. But yeah, and even not realizing it, I'd sat down in this sort of wave. I guess maybe I just interrupted someone's magical energy, perhaps. But I sat down in it without realizing, and yes, I had to leave instantly, which was, it was really scary at the time, but a really powerful memory for me now because it solidifies something. That's sort of my spooky, in inverted commas, story.
That's actually really interesting. I've thought a lot about how the divine shows up in our lives before we recognize her or it or whatever you want to call it. And as you were telling it just felt like that was one of those moments of you being called. And sometimes that is scary. Sometimes it can be terrifying to feel like you're dealing with something so much bigger than yourself and bigger than what you know and understand, without even being able to put a name on it, without saying like, okay, this is magic that I'm afraid of. It's just, what am I feeling? I don't know this feeling. My body is not used to this. My mind's not used to this. My spirit's not used to this. I need to get away from it. And then it sounds like what happened is you just followed up on that. How did you end up after that experience going back into magic?
Oh, that's a good question. And actually, so I will answer that in a second, but I think you're so right. I think at the time it felt really scary. And also there is so much, obviously, sort of superstition and ways that people view pentagrams are often quite negative, or pentacles probably more accurate, but that are very negative. And so obviously if you're sitting in a situation, if you find yourself in a similar situation and then you feel something really intensely, it's very normal to probably be like, oh my God, what's happening? This is really scary. But you're probably so right of the sense that it was just a really intense experience that, once I'd had time to rationalize, was just energy. I mean, it was just, I'd stepped into someone's magical barrier so randomly. I can't believe I just walked in the middle of the night, 10 p.m., complete darkness, and just sat in the center of a pentagram, just of all places to sit. That probably was the calling. And I mean, I had been practicing. I'd taken a bit of a break when I turned 13, actually, and that happened when I was 14. And I think, if I'm being honest, I think I got back into it then. I mean, yeah.
That's really fascinating. I think, yeah, just from what you said, it just kind of sounds like you were called back in. Like, that's why you ended up there. That's why you were drawn to that spot. And it was saying, hey, come back home.
Yeah, I think you must be right. I can't imagine my life without this sort of thing. You know, when something just feels like, not it was made for me in the sense, in like an egotistical way, obviously, but this was my path. I can't imagine ever of being on a different one.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I think that's just how you know that you are in the right place.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for you to be here. I'm so grateful we could have this chat.
I'm really grateful for you having me on here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are going to wrap up, but before we do you have any advice or guidance or messages for those listening out there? Anybody who, just anything you want to share?
Yeah, I think my biggest advice is, I know when you see people online doing witchy things or Wicca stuff, however you want to, whatever path calls you, they often have altars and tools and all of these things, but you really don't need that. It is, at the end of the day, a very internal thing, and your path can be found internally. You don't need to buy hundreds of things in order to find it. You'll feel it, and when it's right, you'll know. It might take a bit of time, but it does happen.
That is so true. That is absolutely some of the best advice. You have it in you. You don't need any of the extra stuff. It's all helpful and it's all fun, but you really just need you and the magic that's inside of you, your connection to divinity. Because you're as connected to the divine as a blade of grass, as the sun.
Yes,
like
exactly.
it goes back to what you said earlier. We are a part of nature. We are connected to nature because we are nature. And if you can see divinity in a sunflower, then you should see divinity in yourself. And that means you don't need herbs and stones and athames and all that stuff. It helps to focus. It's good for the psychological aspect. But yeah, thank you. That is just wonderful advice.
Thank you. Thank you for adding to it.
Thank you, Ayshen, for being here. Can you let our listeners know where they can find you, where you want to be found, and then we'll call it a day.
Yes, of course. So I can be found on Instagram and Twitter. It's my my name on both of those is at @author_Ayshen. My name is spelled Ayshen. It's kind of it's a Turkish spelling, so it's might not be what people think it would be, but yes, and I love hearing from people. If anyone wants to message, say hello.
It is a beautiful name, by the way. I see you on Twitter all the time, and I love your name. I did not have the right pronunciation in my mind before you told me. It's so much better. Yours is so beautiful. This has been such a lovely chat. I would love to have you on again in the future. We were talking a little bit about that. Thank you so much. I really appreciated this. This has been such an interesting chat. I learned quite a bit. Thank you. I'm sure our listeners are going to learn a lot too and really enjoy listening to you. You have been quite relaxing, quite pleasant to engage with, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate your presence here, and I appreciate your presence in the world. You do belong here.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on here. It's felt really special to be able to talk about this and connect with another practitioner.
That is part of why I'm doing it, for this connection and to learn things that I don't necessarily think of or understand, and hopefully to help somebody else learn those things. But most of it, I think, is just talking to other witchy spiritual people, and it is beautiful, like you said. So thank you. This has been wonderful. I'll talk to you again soon.
All right, have a beautiful rest of the day. Bye-bye.
So we have reached the tarot oracle reading section of our episode. I actually ended up editing the whole episode, getting it all ready, and then remembered that I had forgotten to do this reading. So, luckily, I did remember before uploading the episode, so here we are. We are going to start with the Universe Has Your Back Oracle. We're going to pull a couple of cards from this oracle, and then we're going to do some tarot. So I am calling upon my higher self, and I am calling upon the higher self of all of those who are here to receive this message. All of those who are here to receive this message and are connecting with me. I am calling upon our higher selves to speak through these cards. I am calling upon our Mother and Father, Lord and Lady, God and Goddess, to watch over and protect us during this reading and to give us their guidance. I am calling upon our angels and our ancestors, our spiritual guides, our passed on loved ones, our living, our spiritual and non-spiritual protectors and guides, and all of those who want the absolute best for us, and especially those who want the best for whoever is listening to this message at this time. In the name of the divine, what is our message for this week? What is our message for this week from the Universe Has Your Back Oracle? What is our message for this week? Please and thank you. We have obstacles are detours in the right direction. I do whatever it takes to get closer to consciousness. And that's it. On the bottom of the deck, we have, I let go of the shadow of the past by seeing someone for the first time with the eyes of love. Okay, so let's pull some tarot cards to go along with this message. Once again, asking our higher selves, our spiritual guides, our angels, our ancestors, and all those who want the absolute best for us, and especially those who want the best for whoever is receiving this message this week. What do we need to know this week? What do we need to know this week? Please and thank you. Whenever we're listening to this, please, for the next 7 days. And thank you. So the Hermit jumped out. Then we have the King of Swords. And those are the only two that came out. The bottom of the deck, we have the Three of Cups. So it's very interesting that both decks only gave us 2 cards to go with. So obstacles or detours in the right direction, and I do whatever it takes to get closer to consciousness. Then we have the Hermit and the King of Swords. Some of us may have been working towards certain goals, and we found that there have been stumbling blocks along the way, but with this Hermit energy, it is saying that we are absolutely on the right path, which goes along with that Oracle card. We're on the right path, and this is a path that only we can take. So whatever it is that you have been working on, that it's been getting you closer to you can say consciousness or creative abundance, some sort of knowledge that we've been looking for with this King of Swords, some sort of even communication with another person possibly, although I am seeing with these two cards, this Hermit and this King of Swords, they're both a single individual person on the deck. And there's a lot of blue, so I do think this is a very personal journey we're taking towards our own wisdom, towards our own acceptance even, towards some sort of knowing that we've had in the back of our minds, but we haven't necessarily been sure of because we've been on this lonely journey. And the thing about the Hermit is he's carrying a lamp, but it's generally pretty dark around him. So all he can really see is the step that's right in front of him. So he's on this very narrow, direct path, but he can't see the whole path. He has no idea where it's leading. He has no idea what it is actually bringing to him. However, even though he's tripping up a little bit because he can't see that far ahead of himself, he's still on the same path. He just doesn't know that. And I think that's what we're getting with his obstacles or detours. While he may be facing obstacles, he's actually still going in the right direction. He's going in the only direction he's going to take. And I say this a lot in my actual life is everything that does happen is meant to happen because it has happened. So we can hope and dream and look at other paths, and we can decide the next step to take, but essentially, if it wasn't meant to happen, it wouldn't have happened. If it wasn't going to happen, then it's not going to happen. Like, what is essentially. What we have right now is all there is. All that we can actually experience is what we're experiencing. And I know that sounds very redundant, but a lot of the times we get in our head of what could have been and what could have happened and what we should have done and what we should have said or could have said or where we could have gone. Did we make a mistake then? If we hadn't done it this way, where would we be now? And it's fine to consider these things, but ultimately you are where you are right now. And all you can do is take the next step and the next step and hope that you're going in the right direction, even though we have no true, clear sense of what is going to happen. And all the tarot can do is say, this is the path that you're on, and this is the steps that you're taking next, or this is the step that if you take this step, this is the likely outcome. But it can't actually tell us what the future is, because the future doesn't exist yet. It hasn't happened yet. And I think we are coming closer to this realization, and we're becoming more acceptive of the present. And once we do that, once we let go of thinking about the past and the steps that we took, and even thinking about the future, what's going to happen if we do this and this and this, we're going to find this Three of Cups energy that's at the back of the deck, and this letting go of the shadow energy. And we're going to be able to not only look at someone with the eyes of love, but we're going to be able to look at life itself through the eyes of love, through the eyes of presence, through the eyes of, well, even though I messed up, or I feel like I messed up, what is the good of now? What can I get out of now? What blessings are there available to me now? Again, all we have is now. And if I can accept my blessings now, then I can accept my blessings in the next moment and in the next moment. And if I'm pushing away my blessings, or I'm so focused on the past, I'm so focused on the hurt that I experienced or the hurts that I caused, but I'm not allowing any of this to heal, I'm not allowing any change to come forth, then I'm just going to keep stumbling on my path. And the light's never really going to come through. But eventually, the thing about the Hermit is eventually he does get to a place where his little lantern becomes a star, becomes luminescence, becomes brightness, and he actually sees where the path has led. He sees in front of him, he sees behind him, and then we move into this King of Swords where he is much more decisive and much more clear about where he's going. And even with this king, he's sitting in a throne, so he's resting. He's like, I've taken my path, I've done my walking, I know now who I am, I know now what I need to do, or what I've done has affected me now. And I'm ready to celebrate. I'm ready to share myself. I'm ready to share my joys with this Three of Cups. It's all about celebration. It's all about connective. It's all about connection. It's all about love. And I mean, I consider it like about love amongst like family and friends and abundance, connection, working with people for joy, celebrating with people, feeling light, feeling comfortable with yourself. And that's because we let go of that shadow. We accepted the detours, we accepted the stumbles, we accepted that we didn't necessarily know where we were going all the time, but we did what we had to. We moved through these things, we moved forward, and we let go so that we could come into a place of knowledge, acceptance, comfort, celebration, and joy. and freedom. There's a lot of freedom I'm sensing here. So that's your message for this week. I do hope that resonated with you. Let me know, and check out the show comments to message us. Thank you so much. So that is our episode. That was such a lovely interview. Ayshen is a really genuine and pleasant person to speak with. So I really enjoyed that. I hope you did. And that's it. That's for our show. If you would like to be interviewed, go ahead and check the show notes and reach out through our Maiden Circle link and let me know. I am open to interviewing people from all walks of life about spiritual living. And if you have other things you'd like to share, of course, that's welcome too. So until next time, I wish you so many blessings and I send you all my love. Take care. Blessed be. Bye now.